I brought half a dozen Green Berets that I wore throughout all this period of time, and in every one of them, I flew in a Huey helicopter. But certainly when I was in the reserves and at Fort Bragg, I don't know whether I'd call them missions, but they were basically where you'd go on training exercises. When I was in Vietnam, I was largely a passenger. I was with the 5th Special Forces Group in Vietnam from roughly March of '69 to July of '70, and started out as a liaison in the Seven Mountains area, then went to what was known as the Mike Force, the Mobile Strike Force. Special Forces had units that they called Mobile Strike Forces. They were quick reaction forces because we had A camps throughout all of Vietnam, and occasionally to have a problem being attacked or nearly overrun, and they didn't, because the A teams typically only had 12 SF guys. Occasionally, and they had a large number of CIDs, Civilian Irregular Defense Group, basically mercenaries that worked at each of the A camps. But occasionally they'd become endangered and need help, and they would send in members of the Mike Force. And the Mike Force I was involved with was B-40, located in the Delta, the 4 Corps, the bottom fourth of Vietnam. And when I was there, I spent 6 months there and would use it. I diverged, but to use a Huey, I was a CAPO officer, a civic action or psychological operations officer. In essence, I was a Peace Corpsman with a green hat, and my purpose was to take care of the subordinate elements, which would be the A teams, and we had half a dozen A teams under the B-40. So from time to time, I would be called upon to go to the A teams and do things related to psychological operations or civic action, and that included medical care, training, sometimes entertainment. We'd have movies for the people, and as I say, we were a little bit like Peace Corpsmen, and I would always take Huey helicopter because that was about the only way to get to most of these places. In the Delta, we were strung out all over the Dickens, and the Delta was kind of an odd place. It was like 6 months out of the year, it was like being in western Kansas, extremely flat, level, nothing of any consequence. And the other 6 months, give or take, it would be a huge, huge rice paddy because we get lots of rain during the rainy season, and the only way to get there would be to ride the Huey. And I spent almost a year, I spent 11 months in Vietnam before I got shot at. We were far away, maybe you hear some gunfire in the distance, but as I said, I hadn't gotten shot at and was about ready to rotate home. And decided that would be a huge embarrassment for a Special Forces officer to go to Vietnam for a year, not get shot at, and not get what was known as a combat infantryman's badge. Because at that time I was an infantry officer. I'd gone to infantry OCS at Fort Benning, and that's basically the most common branch in the Army. So I volunteered to extend as long as I got to go to an A-team. And I went to a place called Bos Hoi, B-A space X-O-A-I, which was an A-team and an A camp out on the Cambodian border. And it was remote enough, again, going back to the Hueys, effectively the only way to get there was to ride a Huey. They also had Chinooks, the CH-47s, which were a larger facility, and there were some minimal roads coming into Bos Hoi, but effectively we were supplied almost totally with Hueys. That's how we got supplies and ammunition and on and on. It was in arguably in a enemy-controlled area at least at night, and typically you didn't want to come in on deuce and a half. Everything we got, as I recall, we bought on the local economy or came in with Hueys.